I'm Cherylanne Skolnicki, and this is Brilliant Balance, the show for working women who are ready to shine. Each week, I bring you ideas, inspiration, and insight on balance, business, and getting it all done gracefully. You ready? Let's be brilliant. This is episode 351 of the Brilliant Balance podcast. And today we're talking about unlocking progress by embracing the obvious. So I want to give you a little bit of background on how I got the idea for this episode. A while back, I had attended an event, and this event was with people who are entrepreneurs across the board, and particularly people who have personal brands, right? Where their business is connected in some way to themselves as an individual. They could be selling their expertise or sharing about their life experience as authors or speakers. So they're very rooted in their own personal brand. And I would categorize 90 to 95% of this room as like hyperachievers. I mean, these are go-getters, people who really are looking for the next level of growth, the next level of success. They are so passionate about getting their message out there. And as I looked across the room on day one of this meeting, I was thinking to myself, like, everyone here seems to be looking for the magic answer, right? They're looking for like the magic bullet of what is the next thing that I need to do to really catapult myself forward. And I have 100% been there more times than I can count, right? More times than I can count, particularly as an entrepreneur, as a business owner. I have found myself sort of circling around in my thoughts or, talking with my team or, heaven forbid, Googling, right? I mean, the amount of time I have spent just searching for answers on the interwebs for the magic thing that I needed to do next to get myself unstuck. And everyone in the room seemed to be doing some version of that and asking questions along the lines of like, what am I missing, right? What's the thing I need to do? And what was shocking, and it shouldn't have been, but it really landed that way for me, was in how many cases the next step, the advice from the room, the perspective that was shared with them was kind of to just do the thing, that was right in front of them that they already knew they needed to do. Like, in other words, they didn't need absolutely new to the world idea that no one had ever done before. Like in this case, maybe in the marketing arena, what they needed was a level of discipline and accountability to the basics, to the thing that was really obvious. And I was reminded of a time in one of my coaching groups where I had a longtime client who had decided that she was going to run a race. I can't remember if it was a 5K, a 10K, but she was like going to get out there and do a road race. And she was asking me what she needed to do to get ready. And there were a lot of questions about gear and shoes and watches and, the right schedule for running and all of those things. And I remember saying to her, and it's kind of become like a little bit of an inside joke in our coaching community, if you want to run a race, the first step is to go for a run. Like, put everything else aside. Wear the shoes you already have. Go without a watch if you don't have one. Don't worry about the route. Don't worry about how long you're out there for. Just like, if you want to be prepared to run a race, you're going to have to run. And once you actually do the first run or you string together a couple of them, then you can start to add some of the bells and whistles and, things that might make it easier for you to track your progress or to feel really, great while you're recovering or whatever it might be. So under that umbrella for this episode, I think it would be healthy for us to look at where in your life are you maybe looking past the obvious? Where are you overcomplicating things? And paradoxically, instead of that making you go faster or accelerating your progress, it's actually slowing you down, right? Where the search for the cool new thing, like the fancier way of doing it, is actually causing friction in your progress instead of acceleration. And I'm not going to talk a lot today about how do you decide what is the core activity, okay? But I want you to think about where in your life might you be feeling stuck. Let's say that you are a business owner And I think there's kind of two places business owners feel stuck. One is I don't have enough leads or I don't have enough sales, right? I don't have enough sales coming in the door. That's probably the most common thing I hear from business owner clients and peers. The second thing could be I have so many leads and so much opportunity, and I don't have good systems in place for me to deliver whatever it is I deliver, right? I'm getting stuck and clogged up in the service delivery because either I'm still trying to do everything myself or my team is too small. Like there's kind of this bottleneck effect that's happening. Honestly, 99% of the time, it's one of those two things that we really hear from entrepreneurs. So if you are a business owner, you might find that one of those is the thing that's kind of running through your head all the time. In your personal life, there might be an area. I hear a lot about home organization, right? I cannot get my arms around this clutter. I hear a lot about health and wellness related objectives, things that people want to do more of or do better or feel better about in terms of their own personal well-being. Maybe there's an area of an important relationship in your life that's not working the way you want, where you're feeling really stuck. We could go on all day, right? You take a quick inventory and ask yourself, where am I feeling friction? Like I'm just not making the progress. I don't have the result that I want. And ask yourself, what is the most obvious thing that you could do that might help you unlock that area of your life? Okay. And then ask yourself, why am I not doing it? Why am I not already doing it? And I'm going to give you 5 sort of stomping grounds here, 5 places where you can poke around and ask yourself, is this maybe why I'm avoiding the obvious? The first reason I see people avoid it is we think it cannot be this obvious. Like we must be wrong. This must not be the next action because it's too simple. It's too clear. It cannot possibly be right. Like how could it possibly be that easy? Take the running example, right? If you want to run a race and become a runner, you need to go for a run. Like, duh, it's kind of a head slap moment. How could it possibly be that easy? If you want more sales in your business, you probably need to have more sales conversations, right? Or ask for leads. So those are really obvious places that we might think it's so easy that we will go all around the edges thinking there must be something, right? Something more fancy than that I should be doing. And I hope that you're sitting there sort of laughing at yourself at this moment and smiling, thinking, wow, yeah, I am really avoiding the obvious. Second reason that we might avoid the obvious thing is we tell ourselves we're not ready yet. We're not ready to do that thing. I can't go have sales conversations because my website's not ready, or I don't have business cards. I'm old enough. That was like the first thing I worried about when I started 15 years ago when I was starting my first business. I was like, I don't have business cards. That was a big deal. I don't have the website. My LinkedIn profile doesn't say the right thing. I don't have an entire CRM system established. So we find all of these places that we think we have to get ready before we do the main thing. The equivalent in the running example, right? I have to buy the watch and get the schedule and have the right shoe, all the equipment and gear instead of just going for the run and we're kind of out of sequence, right? In that one. The third thing that potentially comes up is we actually don't want to do the work. Sometimes the obvious thing brings with it a fair amount of effort. Like it's not just going to be a magic bullet. It's something that we're going to have to put some effort, maybe even sustained effort against, right? We're not going to run the race after we do one run. We're going to have to run consistently. And so we sometimes look at that and not even consciously, right? You would never, air quotes here, consciously avoid this. But subconsciously or unconsciously, we will throw up all kinds of barriers to help us avoid that work, right? We look at it and go, well, this is just going to take too long. I mean, can't we automate it? Isn't there some kind of gadget we could buy? Isn't there some sort of plan someone has figured out? Like there's got to be a shortcut here, right? Because we're looking at it saying, I actually don't want to do that work. I'm not sure I'm going to like it, right? It feels like effort. At the same meeting that I was referencing, one of my favorite statements that came out of the meeting was, guys, we can do things we don't like, right? We actually can do things even if we don't like them, right? If we know that that's what's effective. Because we do like success. We do like the results. And sometimes at least in the phase where we're building momentum, we may not like the activity that much. It's hard, right? To try something new or start something new or build a practice that is not already established. So if you find that you are not doing the obvious thing because it just looks like a lot of work, that's a good signal. Okay, balance builders, any chance you're feeling a little overwhelmed by your overloaded schedule? I know, I've been there. In fact, it's why I created 14 Days to Calendar Control. This is my step-by-step program where I share my personal system and set of tools to help you transform your chaotic weeks into easy breezy ones. Okay, maybe not easy breezy, but at least edited and organized. Listen, there's training, templates, and tools in there to help you get things under control quickly. Say goodbye to constant conflicts and chronic rushing, and say hello to calendar control. Curious? Head to brilliant-balance.com/calendar for instant access. That's brilliant-balance.com/calendar. Now back to the show. The fourth reason that you might find yourself sort of circling is if you get distracted by bright, shiny objects, I'll just call them, right? Squirrels that create detours. So a lot of the people that I work with as clients, and therefore I assume a lot of the listeners of this podcast are multi-passionate, right? We're kind of excited about a lot of things, curious about a lot of things. And because of that, it can be challenging to just stay the course. We get a little bored, in other words, right? And so other ideas come on and we're like, oh, I'll do a little bit of this and I'll do a little bit of that. And before you know it, we have a bunch of side projects going. We have a lot of kind of open loops. And every single one of those like dilutes our effort against the main thing. Right? It slows down our progress because we are one human with one set of hours in a day, one set of days in a week. And if we are spreading our efforts across a lot of things that we're curious about, instead of really providing focus to the main thing, then we really can't be asking ourselves why the main thing isn't making progress, right? So a little while back, I made a list in my company for me particularly, but it was me and another kind of key employee. Where are we focusing our effort? Where's our time going? And I kind of broke it up into 3 buckets. There were like, this is like the day-to-day stuff that just keeps the lights on. Like we have to do these things every week. These are the things that really drive the business forward, particularly from a sales and marketing standpoint. And then the third column was like, these are longer term, good for the business, good for the health of the business projects, but they don't have an immediate return, right? They're kind of longer range, strategic work, brand equity work, like things that are a little more strategic. And it was interesting that way too much of our time was going to the first and third, right? To the daily grind and to sort of the long range planning. And not nearly enough was going to that middle column, which is like really about how are we going to get the message out and attract new people to this business. So if you look at your own life, you could use any 3 buckets you want. You could use 5. But the question is, if the main thing represents 1 bucket on this area where you're stuck, and you take a look at where your time is going, I bet you're going to be surprised that so much of it is not focused against this thing that's really vexing you. And that's a pretty easy shift, right? But it's so easy to get distracted into all the other things that excite us and that kind of vie for our attention. All right, fifth reason that you might be avoiding the obvious is you may be very aware that this is the final frontier, meaning that when you do this thing, it is either it's going to prove kind of once and for all whether it's going to work or not work. And something deep within you might know that you are confronting the potential for failure, right? Or the potential to have to admit, okay, this is not going to work. That fear of failure, the potential to confront like that last line in the sand that says, if I do this thing, I'm really going to know if it works or not. Think back to when you were dating and you're like, I don't know, or you were in the dating arena, right? And you're like, I don't know if this guy likes me or not. And you're trying to figure it out. You're trying to like dancing around the idea. I don't know. Do they like me? Do they not? And you don't really want to say it overtly because once somebody says it or asks the question, it's like, now you know for sure. And how long did we drag our heels about that? Because we really didn't want the answer. It's like, ooh, if I get the actual answer, the answer might be no. And I don't know how I feel about that. And I think there's so many things in life that line up that way, right? That if we are like, if I've actually done the thing, I've done everything I know how to do with consistency, with excellence, and it's not working, then I have to say like, I might actually have a plan here that's not achievable. Okay. And so I think that fear of failure kind of plays at higher and lower levels where we don't want to give up, but we also are like, we don't want to push it. And so my encouragement to you as you listen to each of these things is, what are you going to do about it, right? What are we going to do differently with this kind of perspective shift? If we are saying to ourselves, back to my number one, it just can't be this simple. This is too simple. We could say, well, what if it is? What if I start with the most obvious? My dad famously, my dad says this to me, let's just start with the obvious. Let's do the easiest possible fix. It's kind of like rebooting your computer. You're trying 100 times to figure out why it's not working. And finally you reboot and you're like, oh, I guess that's really all it needed. Turn it off and turn it back on again. So the equivalent of the obvious, why not start there? Instead of walking past it, what if we just do that first? In the realm of I'm not ready yet, right? If you find that you are preparing to do the main thing and you're trying to get all your ducks in a row perfectly all the time, what if you just lean into imperfect action to taking the step toward the obvious, knowing like, hey, this is my first draft version. This can always come back and get better. If you find that you're avoiding the work, that was my third one, right? I'm just avoiding the work. What if you tell yourself, we can do things that we don't like, right? I can do things. I don't have to like it to do it. I don't have to make it easier to do this thing. I can just get started. I can optimize later, right? I can find simplification opportunities later, but I got to do it. Fourth, if you are subject to distraction like me, right? If you're someone who is always into what's next, right? What is the new exciting thing that's grabbed your attention? What can you do to stay focused? How can you put things in a parking lot, metaphorically, right? Kind of give them a place to land for a while. You're like, I'm not going to do that yet. I'm going to stick with this main thing until I see if it's working. And then that last one may be the most complicated. If you really are maybe not even conscious that what you're afraid of is, if this doesn't work, I might have to pivot. If this doesn't work, I might have to make a shift. I would argue the sooner you know that, the better, right? Wouldn't you rather know definitively so that you can get on the right course than spend a long time wondering, I don't know if it's going to work or not because I actually have been afraid to try. So in all of these cases, the number one thing is to get clarity about what is the key activity that would predictably lead me to success. And sometimes it's not easy. Sometimes you need a little bit of perspective to help you identify the main thing, right? And then keep the main thing. And so I'm always happy to be a part of a conversation like that. If you feel stuck, if you want to run something past me, you can DM me anytime on Instagram. It's fun to hear from y'all on Instagram. So I'm at CSchoolNikki on Instagram. Just DM me and be like, hey, this is the thing I'm trying to do. And this is what I think is the main activity. What do you think? Happy to give you my perspective there. Also, remember, we have the Brilliant Balance Facebook group. That's an open group. You are welcome to join if you're not already in it. You might already be in it and you've forgotten, right? Just pop over to that group. It's just called Brilliant Balance and post your thing there. This is what I'm trying to get done. This is what I think is my obvious main thing that I've been avoiding. What do you guys think? Get some perspective from the women in that group. They are so supportive. I love that group. Most of them are podcast listeners. And so it's a great place because you'll have shared vernacular from this episode, like a shared perspective that you can use to cheer each other on. And so this is a place where my advice for you today is to pick the obvious thing. Execute with excellence and repeat, right? Give yourself the benefit of a little bit of tunnel vision so that you can find your way forward. That's all for today, my friends. Till next time, let's be brilliant.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.